house and get a ride with you guys.
What time do you have? Yeah, we'll have to
Which
check.
time is peace and
Sure.
my time, huh?
I think it's at 5 o'clock.
Did you see
No,
the,
that's our Jim Leland.
That's what it's right. Oh, yeah.
He's a wonderful man.
She very hard.
How do you think she got the name
Well,
Gertrude?
the
I
sisters,
thought he said how she
they
got the
couldn't,
name
they
Grapefruit.
didn't understand Gaetana. Isn't that right, Jim?
Well, that's what I heard, but according to you, as quoted by your niece,
No, that's not what I said.
Oh, now we're gonna get.
No, I
That's
said
why
that my
this is a work in progress.
father was,
had her
can
name
I,
in
time
it.
out.
See, now
This
she's-
was a 2-hour phone call.
Well,
I'm
read
sure
what
she
she
was
said.
writing very quickly. Read what I said. Read what
didn't
Elizabeth
Oh, she
said.
said that you
Kill the
had-
messenger.
You had a change on the roles in Ellis Island.
Oh, no, Elizabeth.
Oh,
Here we
Elizabeth, how
go.
could you?
I don't even know about Ellis
Oh,
Island.
that's two.
I never heard
Okay,
of such a thing.
Mozart never listened to criticism.
Oh, I'm not worried. I want to put all the versions in. It's not fun if we just have one
Okay,
version.
now, the way she got the name Gertrude was where she went to
Well, what was
school.
Mozart's version?
When she enrolled in grade school, her name was Gaetana. They called her Tanina at home. And when she said that to the nuns didn't know that name at all, and someone said, well, we'll just call you Gertrude. Now, is that the story that you know? I don't know what this other, now, my father is the only one, no, I guess May called her Gertie too. There weren't many people that called her Gertie.
Well, why would they?
Uncle
Used to call her
John.
A
Kid.
lot of people.
He called her Gertie.
I thought you said they called her grapefruit.
Kid.
You put that one in.
Watermelon.
What do you
Called
think?
her
Does it sound right to you?
Huh? Anyone is right.
But Ellis Island? I don't know Ellis Island.
Oh, boy.
No, Judith wanted to buy an audio tape to tape everybody talking about the family.
Can't even get the questions right.
No, the best tape we have is of Joe interviewing.
Yes.
What is that question he continues to ask?
Do you know where that tape really originated?
Have you seen that one? Have you heard that one? He's asking a question, Mom answers it, and 2 minutes later, he tells her what he heard, and Elizabeth says, no, Dad, that's not what she said.
But
And that was only 2 minutes and you were there together.
But the truth of that tape
he
is,
keeps asking a question of some guy, and what the hell was the guy's name? And so what about this? And they tell him,
Barbarossa.
no.
Wasn't it about Barbarossa?
No, and then 2 minutes later, no, it was on mom's side of the family. 2 minutes later, and what about this?
Because I find it so funny.
And then she had to
she
shut
says,
him up for a
She
while.
just told you about
I
that.
stole the puzzle out of that, otherwise everything.
Massimo. It was about Massimo. Something about Massimo. Because I started yelling at him about Massimo.
Well, you know, I got that tape around Christmas time, and I was
You
doing
can put it
some
back in,
baking
and
and
then I'll
stuff
take it
that
out
I do
later.
at Christmas, and I thought,
Yeah,
see,
how
I
it
would
was
turn that tape on that Elizabeth sent me, and then I thought, oh no, I'll get all upset. And then I thought, what the heck, I'm going to turn it on. Well, I was hysterical the whole time that I was trying to make these
Oh, that
cookies and things.
Well, do you know why that tape even came into being?
You had an assignment.
I had a social studies project to do my family history. Right. And so Dad said, you'll interview your grandmother. And so we sat down, we started interviewing Grandma,
Take your cookies with
and
you.
it became very clear very quickly that I better take over. Because, I was afraid to at first, and he started, and I think in a way he was kind of trying to make me do
Bring
it.
your cookies over.
He probably wants your
Wants
Nobody
a
cares.
cookie.
Funny, Jackie. You have to give me, have you got a new email
Only bring
address?
over one at a
Sit down
time.
here.
From the one I
No,
used
it's
to
not. It's the same old thing. Liz Perry.
Okay, I don't have it. Been like a real it really did. I'd like to have it.
No, it's like
Never
a
had it,
few
never
wood.
will.
I don't know where I'm gonna put it,
I
but
have
I'd
it.
like to.
Just,
See, the really.
And also
they're
the
very
robbery
debug,
got
and if
hit
it just, your
this week.
mind kind of goes, wandering down all kinds of
It really makes you
heroism
real, I
and
think,
Satanism and all kinds of just
I
whatever
wonder,
paths
I'll tell you, I'm interested in what you
she
said
might
that
be
because
leading
the
us.
thing I love to see.
Wherever the family was at that time.
No, my dad was.
And he had a brand new
Me and John
Cadillac.
were the same height.
Oh, you are? I thought you were.
Who, Himati?
So you both
And
Himati,
16?
yeah.
What was his first
Which he
name?
promptly put into the barn because he didn't want any dust to get on it.
Oh,
Gee, I know the story. Yeah.
He
And
was good though.
my dad
Yeah, well, to me,
was
he
about
was
14
like
years old at the
the
time.
guys I ever,
And after
Did
dinner,
he
while
take
the
the weight
people were
off
all
that he
talking around the
took
table,
off?
and he was
Yeah.
getting fidgety like young
Take
kids.
probably another
Get-
100 pounds.
Nah,
So he took off,
50 now.
40,
went in the barn to take a look
I
at
don't know
his
what he weighs.
brand new
He
Cadillac.
needs to take more on.
but
And he
He's
started
exercising, playing softball.
fooling around with it.
yeah.
Right. They
The
play
Hamatis come out about 3 hours later to get in their car and go back to Ridgewood.
Yeah.
And Pam went.
And
well,
that
I
damn
took
Cadillac
her
is all over the
to
floor.
Taking
the
the
wheels
bike.
off. He had the hood off.
Right.
Ooh, that
And-
wasn't hard to do in
Was
those
it, was
days.
it Chip that was saying that
a
she's
couple
got
of nuts and
Robert
bolts.
Kennedy?
Himati now is ready to
That
kill
was
my
a
father.
translation, apparently.
What's that?
And
Well, Pam actually said to check your bones.
Grandpa steps in the
It's
way
not
and
good news,
he
it's
says,
not
wait a
bad
minute, wait a minute, wait a minute.
Oh.
And
So-
He said to my
Just
father,
for
he
Jackie,
Yeah,
that
the
kind
wheels
of
back
what
on.
Jackie
translated that to us
says,
as
and then get those shafts
There's good
hanging on the
news and
wall
bad
over there.
news.
Technically, that's
Get
correct.
your horse up to it.
Yeah.
Those are two different
And
things.
take it down to the
Has
blacksmith
different
The town
effect.
and watch while he puts it together again.
So he was mechanically minded.
Okay, now I want to.
Your father was always mechanically
Oh,
minded.
yes.
Oh, yes.
So
Oh,
what
my
is it?
word.
They think it may
I
be.
want to talk about when Aunt Della came here,
flare.
Jim. What do you have in there,
Flare,
Elizabeth?
right.
Well, I have that she didn't come till she was much older, and now Uncle Jim is telling me that she was left as a baby.
No, no, no.
Don't try
She
to plan
was
any
12 years
vacations for a
old when
while.
they left, and she was working for, like a babysitter for a family there. And she had to save her money that she earned as that babysitter, probably a housekeeper too,
Well,
in
the
order, in
the
order
wet
to,
nurse must have been really surprised when they left the 12-year-old with her.
wet nurse.
I have this right from Aunt Della.
See, nothing of the 12.
Aunt Della told me that when she went with Lillian to Italy, she related the history. The only reason they left her there was because she was too young to travel. So they left her with a wet nurse in Brosoleno, which is right on the map here.
Okay, I've never heard this story, Jim.
Well,
Sounds like
Well,
a
I'm hearing it
And
now.
my story comes from Mom, so you know.
Well, maybe
What
that
is the
after.
answer?
But go ahead, go
12.
ahead. So they left her with a wet nurse.
and she was born in 1890. Your father was born in 1896 here. So she must have been 3 or 4 at the most, and probably only 2 when they left her.
She
Possibly
needed
even
a wet
1,
nurse. She was
Yeah.
pretty young.
because she has a recollection of the place, which would be the recollection of a 3 or 4-year-old. When she went back in 1960 or someplace like that, with, I think, that was
We were in
Lillian.
Ridgewood.
She told me that she went to this town and recognized the place because of a large tree that was still there. And she knew the bridge was right off this house, but it was a different bridge. And this guy took her over and showed her that the old arch bridge had been bombed down, was laying in the water. Now, she was here by the time Dad was born. So she came between the ages of 4 and 6 to
Who
this
brought her
country.
over?
I don't know whether it's,
Scratch the
I mean,
wet
a
nurse.
child coming.
she came very, very young.
Well, unless she was too.
Well,
could've
what
come
is
with
the
the older
story
brother.
about
She could have
whoever
what?
was left there until her teen years and had to earn her own passage? And then when she came, because she'd always been in a servant position where in Italy, they used her that way at home, and they had her serving and cleaning up, and Aunt Ernie used to tell a story about how if you dirtied a dish, she right away took it and washed it and put it
I
away.
gotta run a bike.
I thought that was Aunt Della.
It's totally beyond.
Oh, God.
Never heard that?
That's something I'll put in your.
Well, if there were older sisters, maybe she's talking about one of the older sisters like Lena or Rose or
No, but they
something.
all came, over with my grandmother.
Well, who's Lily and you?
The guy-
Well, maybe they
Lily
were.
was Lena Lena's daughter, Lena's daughter.
Yeah, no. Rose's daughter.
No, it
Showed her that thing.
This year, I'll tell you, we have two museums. One is the big Western Museum.
That's where you were born.
Would you please
Western
ask
You
Peter
born
what
there?
he
The other is
did to
already
the
born.
keys?
I was born on 14th
To
Street.
the back
So they were already on
doors.
14th Street.
And I said,
She
well,
left
that's
Jersey
the increase.
when her time came because
They probably have.
she wanted to be with her mother
She had
when I was born.
But
You
she-
know,
they-
unlocking
when
the
she
door
was
down.
carrying you, I
But
think
so
she
She
was
was living,
living
they were living there.
But then
on the
after
second
the
floor of that
there was
bakery.
no,
So our
And,
museum, it's
so where's
She
the
didn't
Turner?
want
Probably
to
took
be born in
her
Jersey.
house.
Turner was a big-
Born in
In fact,
New
they
York.
just found
I
it.
think
Yeah,
it's
big
because
check
school
on
for
the
her
right.
family.
Yeah, right. So that's
No, I don't think the family lived
Trees and stuff.
in that bakery. I mean, I don't think Dad's mother and
Knocked down
father
that house and put up the
I think they
ugly
lived
probably
brick
took it
building.
down the
Probably
side
might be
street or
in one of those
something where that
giant
picture's
junkies got-
taken with everybody
Now,
standing in
in fact, I
front
was
of
up
it.
Right,
taking
that
my
was
garbage
Lodi.
the other
Lodi.
day.
Oh,
The
really?
bakery was in Lodi.
That picture's okay. I have that picture scanned in
Now,
there.
that was the family house.
You got a picture
But
of it there in the
Similar to
book.
that.
somehow that
What it-
apartment became my
Actually,
mother
it's
and
kind of
father's
interesting because it's
I
place
see.
when they were first married.
Okay.
water closet on it. And it would've been
So
in
she
my
married your
backyard.
father, they moved to New Jersey where he lived, because that's what you do, the woman goes to where the man lives usually.
And then
They
quickly she
get
went to 14th
pregnant,
Street to have a
she
baby.
wants to go be by her mother, so she goes to 14th Street, you're born.
I don't know what they call
Did-
that style of lock.
Do they,
It's like
does she go back out to Jersey? Because my father was also born on 14th Street.
And so finding something.
Or did they move in, with Pepino? But eventually they did move into that building with, eventually they moved into the building with your grandfather. You lived with Don Pepino on
Oh,
14th
yes,
Street.
yes, but that was,
No, we lived in the back.
we lived on 349 and a half, which was the back building.
So about how old do you think you were when the family moved from Jersey to 14th Street?
Oh, I was very young.
Yeah, I'm in Jersey.
Oh, no,
Not Jersey, we share it, it's Jim and
She's talking
Myron.
about two different things, apples and oranges here. When Mom was pregnant with me, she didn't want to give birth to the baby in Jersey. She came to 14th Street, and I was born on
It's so much
14th
fun.
Street.
Want you to be a New York
I can
citizen?
Yeah.
I was telling Peter, I have something I want to
She
tell
wanted
the
to
kids.
be born there.
No, she wanted to be with the lady
Her
who
mother.
came and lived in the house, the midwife.
All right, whatever.
Okay.
She wanted the baby born on 14th Street.
I just talked to Andrew.
She wanted to be with her mother.
Right.
She
You
just
wanted
came
to be
back
the
First
midwife.
baby,
to
right.
Right,
New
okay.
Zealand.
So,
So he and
Then she went
Bonnie
back to
are
Jersey.
going, they have friends
Now, there's
there
a
in
period of
Austria
time
that
between when she
invite
went
them
back to
over here.
Jersey
So they're going in
and
March.
when
Heard that
Talked
she
to
was
him at one point
Now they
about
came back
seeing
to
if
New
I
York,
could go
it was
with them. if
I would say it was
they
a few
because
years.
I mean, I'd like to go with.
I don't
someone.
remember those years.
Well, John, where was
Sometime
Joe
we'll get
born?
there, but that would be
Joe?
worth. They have gone.
Joe was born in New York too.
Well, Elizabeth's going over.
Yeah, they
too.
always went to
Yeah.
14th Street, because
Yeah.
that's where that midwife came, and she actually lived in for
Yeah.
2
Yeah.
weeks
Yeah.
before and 2 weeks after.
Those were the days.
Right, and if I could remember her name,
Yeah, yeah. We were all born.
I've heard it so many, no, I was born
Here's
in
a
East
picture
I'll have
Elmhurst.
to
of
send you
your
some of the.
I was born in Long Island.
great-grandmother, Paola.
Attorney.
Yes.
I was born in East
Yes,
Elmhurst.
don't you think?
So the midwife must have come out there
Can you hand that over?
Judith, I'll send you a better, a better size of that too. I have a scan of that.
Period, and Lewis and Clark, and the fact that, it's a lot of Moran's.
That's
paintings
Massimo's
that
wife.
Triggered Congress.
That's
to do,
Paola.
starting that.
Your father's grandfather's wife.
Your great-great-grandmother.
Right, great-great-grandmother. Your father's great-grandmother.
You kind of
There's
look like
some,
her, Judy.
There's some road,
Steam.
Oh,
Barbara in
yeah.
there too.
Atmosphere.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's interesting.
We have a
Boy,
couple
she's a lady
of
with an attitude.
We have a really nice.
Yeah, she
That's
does look like
small.
she's got it taken care of. doesn't
Well,
she?
she had to be, the guy she
Kind
was
of a-
married to.
A Renaissance.
And Paula, what was Dr. Hamadi's first name? Do you remember?
Nobody can remember.
He used to
George, wasn't it?
headwink the
And
car out
also
of it.
income from.
You think that meant his first
Uh,
son was?
You mean
named
No,
Smacker?
you mean
No, no,
Massimo.
hoodwink.
We have-
Hoodwink, oh.
We're talking about Massimo now.
Oh, Massimo and
They were at
Paola.
the breakfast table one day.
Yeah, right, and he gave a lot.
And,
to
it
sounds like the
Too
tape.
many.
It was in the,
Got too many conversations.
listen above it.
Yeah.
It They
But
were
he
at a
gave
table one day,
collections.
it was in the
Now, we
wintertime, there was
probably
ice
had
on the
like about
ground.
38
They're both looking out the window,
Renaissance
and he says
paintings
to her,
that come from the
what
Crest
did he call her?
Foundation. And he
Whatever
gave
it
them
was.
to
He says, you
small
know,
museums throughout the country.
those chickens
that
out
were
there,
like
they're gonna,
further than 2
their
hours
feet are
from
gonna
another
freeze to
large
death. You oughta,
museum,
you oughta,
and had a Crest
you oughta knit
store.
them some booties.
So we got
She
this.
took him for his word.
You know, we had
She
a
started
beautiful
knitting booties to put on the chicken feet so they didn't freeze in the wintertime on the ice.
Well,
I guess.
that's
Does
a
the name
similar
Raymond
to a story
Krause
they tell
mean
about
Yeah.
K-R-A-D-I?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you know, our big.
that Aunt Rose
performing arts
told.
center
That's right.
was
Aunt
behind
Rose
the
being
Center
Yeah.
Center. Then I have a
my
dear
father's
friend who,
Sister.
sister,
Cherokee.
who,
her name was
Oh, we've
James
got
Snow.
no,
Travis
she was
Snow.
Dakota.
You do?
Uh,
I'm trying to think, Jim
So
might
she
know.
married
the
Joe
Joe.
Dakota.
Yeah.
Well, then
Joe
there's
Aunt
the
Rose
son,
in
what's his name?
California told me that
You know, the one who's.
her mother was always kidded by the
Roberts
father,
and,
and
you
in
know,
Italy,
they do these
that's a very mountainous area there.
mergers of
So,
companies.
He told her
Pullman,
that
Kravis.
when the chickens laid eggs, the eggs would roll down the hill, so she had to
And
knit
he's
little
very-
pants for
was
them.
very,
To hold the egg?
First name.
They didn't sit on there.
These guys were knit obsessed, basically. That's why Bennett
How about the
told
story of the pig?
Probably knitting all
what's the story of the pig? I don't know this.
Remarried, I'm not sure what her name was.
Used to follow her around everywhere. On Sunday, she'd put a red ribbon around his neck.
Is this Paula?
No, my grandmother.
Yeah.
Paula.
Paula,
Paula, yeah.
right?
Whatever happened to that damn pig, I don't know, but
He'd follow her
She
to church.
followed her to church, yeah.
Well, they're very bright and tameable pets.
Yeah.
Well, the Crocus in town.
So do we have
Seems
any
to me owns a
idea
lot of
of
radio stations.
Henry Kraft.
who
Yeah.
stayed in Italy when everybody moved over here?
Yeah, to leave all these
We're finding
Perials
that
over
out
there.
now.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, I even wrote a letter.
We need
Well,
to-
who is this
Probably
Federica?
nobody's
Who
there.
is she related
Well, we
to?
don't know.
It's got to be one of, I think it's one of Massimo's brothers' lines, but
Now, she says
But they said he was a
she
lover.
thought there
Yeah,
were
I really
basically
liked him.
3
Bessie.
Perial
His wife,
branches, and they
Well,
weren't
one
even
is Ken
sure
Nazar,
of
who's in Tulsa.
who belonged to
He's
who.
kind of
There's
a
about 10
long-
families
he's been
living in
building a
Abiyama,
house that has taken
and,
millions of
but
dollars.
she
Ken?
thinks there might be some more.
Her aunt, I think, it's not her mother, it's her aunt who does a lot of this and is more familiar with the histories and stuff, and she sent all the stuff that Angie and I have sent her
I just
to her
researched
aunt.
that. I'm not
Oh,
gonna
you
remember
actually,
the
but
stuff.
he's one of Raymond Kraft's
Emails.
sons?
I don't
You
know.
all
Well,
the
now,
stories.
do we know how many brothers or sisters Massimo had?
The Krakus in Tulsa, is he connected with the Krakus?
We actually know how many brothers and sisters Massimo had. Well, when Aunt Della did that genealogy,
I thought
did
one
you
brother
not?
went lost or went to South America, that's all.
Right, well, this
It
is
used
what
to be.
Federica
We only knew
has
of 2. I only knew of 2.
hasn't she?
What?
But Jim,
I only knew of 2, Massimo and his other brother, that they
You taking-
ran up to Rotterdam ahead of the police.
right, because of the fight over the
But now,
son.
when
He was
you-
in love with somebody's daughter, and they had a fight. I have that story. You told me.
the brothers came out.
I have a story. You told me.
I think that's on the tape that Grandma.
Yes, maybe that's Graham from
My
Grandma.
recollection was that they were activists. They were.
They were.
Yeah, they were bomb throwers. Not
And
bomb
her
throwers,
brothers
but,
didn't want her to have anything to do with him.
Well,
Okay, just take.
maybe they put the police on them, but
Yeah.
whatever it was, they were one step ahead of the police, and
That's
they
gonna
decided to
help
run together.
considerably.
Right,
And
and
then when they
then
got to Rotterdam, they decided to split,
And,
so at least one would get away.
and Massimo went to the U.S.
Yeah, and
But he was married at the time.
This guy.
Oh, yeah.
Because then he takes up with the Pennsylvania Dutch girl,
There you go.
I mean,
There
why
you
would
go.
the
and they have to send Pareen to go get
There you
her.
I
go.
just had the
There you
first
go.
full body massage.
Now, Jim,
Yeah.
when Aunt Della did the genealogy,
father-in-law.
did she not give you a copy of it?
Church.
Because
She
you
had
helped.
a
Gave it to me.
Really?
It was like, you know.
I thought she did. I thought you helped her with a lot of
So
it.
good, I can't wait to.
I pieced
Yeah,
it
this
together
guy, man,
myself.
she's got a grip.
Oh.
That's a bear trap. mean,
I thought
she's
she
gonna
completely.
shake her.
I remember her
Well,
saying
yeah,
to me
but boy,
once.
don't you feel good afterwards.
I was
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about how it
It
would
was
be
like-
good to go back and
I just
you
decided this
know,
was my
trace
life
all
is taking
this,
a
and
new
she
direction.
said,
It's gonna be
no,
nothing but
sometimes when you
foot
go
massages
back, you
Oh,
find
is
out
that it?
things you
and
don't
full
want
body
to know.
massage.
You do with her?
Well,
I thought,
she,
well, of course, but
She didn't want to know.
My grandfather, my father's father, had a number of
you know,
businesses.
does that part-time. She's got.
Apart from the
full-time job
bakery?
at Northwest Airlines.
He went
He's
broke a
actually
number
an
of times.
ex-stewardess. It's like
I
pizza.
see, I knew I came by it,
Asian
honestly.
soda,
He bought a tavern.
and she, you know, that's.
And my
her job.
father
She works
used
from
to,
5:30 in the morning till 1:30.
have to,
till the
he
afternoon.
used to
I
have
work from
to
noon till 9 o'clock in the evening. So we
help
have a nice
the,
long period where
stagecoach
everybody's
driver.
around
They had a
the
stagecoach
She's gonna be doing.
that they would
some
take
side of the
people
house.
down
I've
to
already
the,
looked into that, which,
where the trolley
anticipating that one looking for minutes, but
started to go to, down to
apparently she doesn't want to
the,
do more than 20 hours a week anyway.
the train.
And
Okay.
And that was with Pareen, his father-in-law as well, wasn't it, or no? The tavern.
I don't know about that,
in
but,
Arlington.
Dad would get up about 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and they'd hitch up the horses to the stagecoach, and they'd go around the lower Ramapo area,
And she said it'd be like early
pick up
evening and stuff, so I
passengers
probably wouldn't be
to bring them
around.
down to the trolley.
Now you're talking about in Italy or in
No.
America?
This
Where's
is your grandfather.
Ramapo?
Yeah.
Oh,
what
it's up
happened to the
northern Jersey.
bakery?
Oh.
It's up by,
Oh,
Lower
this was another
Sussex.
business he
Okay.
had. He bought a tavern.
In addition to his bakery?
No, this is before or after.
And he had the stagecoach too?
Yeah, the stagecoach was part of the deal, you know.
He's on the
I told people that my grandfather had a stagecoach line in Jersey, and they say, you're out of your mind. That comes from the
Yeah, but there's
from the
still,
Wild West,
but
you know.
there's still some record of it somewhere, isn't
But
there?
in those days, the trains ran either this way or this way, you know. And in
Whenever the
between,
train shall meet.
in between the quadrants, why they had to get people down to stations. So the only way to do it was by horse and wagon.
Now, he's the one who had the farm in New Jersey, isn't he?
Oh yeah, well that was after my grandmother died. He bought a
That's the
farm.
story.
Oh, that was where he was making, which is another lot of
He
stories.
bought a farm
about
in New Egypt, which was right next to
New
Fort
Egypt.
Dix. In
New
fact, he had
Egypt, Elizabeth.
Fort
yeah,
Dix's
down
fence
there.
was
But it was a chicken farm wilderness.
Yeah.
he had 25
Getting all the
acres
sailors
of land
from,
with
acres.
Yeah.
only 2 acres of it was arable.
Why the hell would he do
And,
something? Why would anybody in this
the rest of it was
country
woods.
prohibition for?
And this was during Prohibition.
His own-
19, when did she die? 1926 or something like that? Somewhere
Who?
around there.
Yeah,
Oh, no, she died after I was born.
Well, whatever. She was.
28 maybe.
Told me you born.
I was born 27.
Well, yeah, okay, because Dad had the big car.
Yeah, I think she
Yeah.
was born in 30 or
This
31.
guy,
Anyway,
back in like 91.
We probably
he
had that
was,
somewhere.
everybody wanted him to go live with them. And he didn't want to go live with anybody.
Like around the Grand Banks.
And
off the New England
finally,
coast,
Yeah.
they asked him what he's going to do. He
which
says, I'm
caught
going to
a
buy a
lot
chicken
of
farm.
the fishing fleet
Because at
out.
that time, Vineland area down in Jersey was
Yeah.
just
There was
sprouting
like
out
tornado,
as a poultry area.
Mhm.
hurricane coming up.
Yeah.
So he was out and he buys this hunk of
Summer
land.
across the Great Lakes
And,
and coming down from Canada.
Dad went down to visit him one day, and he
When
comes
these
back and I
worlds
hear him talking to
collide.
my mother.
That's where they call
He says, I don't know,
There was
There's
It's
something
about as
funny
bad
going
as
on.
it
He
could
says,
be well.
there's chickens walking around the yard, in the house, on the table, in the living room. They're everywhere where they're not supposed to be. Well, about
Yeah.
2 months later, I guess,
What happened, and some of the rest
Dad gets a call from a farmer down
Yeah.
the road.
Last thing when we did.
Mr. Periale, I think you better come down here, your dad's in trouble.
A 20-foot, they're talking
So,
180
He gets in the car and he rushes down to
Wow.
New Egypt down there.
That sucks.
Can't find him.
That.
Starts calling around the state. Gets a hold of Aunt Della and she says, yeah, he's up here in Ridgewood with me. He says, you better come up, we got problems.
How'd he get up there?
So it turns out
Get in here.
that
It was, you know, I know enough of
they're making booze.
Yeah.
And they got a still going.
interest this.
They got a big hole in the fence.
Jim's reading it now.
Fort
but
Dix,
I bet anybody
and
who's
the-
been out on the water,
The GIs are coming in,
Yeah.
buying
Yeah,
booze,
that
you know.
sounds absurd. Like that.
And of course, you can't hide this thing because you can
Right.
smell it a mile away. So
Sebastian.
one day, his partner is the one that got him into this. He happened to see the woods, and he says, "Oh, Julie," he says, he says, "this is wonderful with that army place next door and your woods here, and we get a still, we start selling." And the old man never stopped to think about anything. Let's do
And
it.
it's
You
new,
know.
so it's
Was it
probably gonna
Rafa
be
he
a-
was
He was making
Whiskey.
What's his name, Angela?
So
Well, you can get it, I
Uh,
got it. The library.
his partner is coming back one day with a load
Yeah,
of
you get
sugar,
on the list.
and
I go to a little library.
Yeah.
he meets my grandfather, and he gets this to him. He says, "Get in there, 15 minutes behind me." So they take off in this Tin Lizzy truck that he's got, you know, with the revenue agents chasing him all over the state of New Jersey, and he ends up in Ridgewood, and he gets arrested. And I guess the family had enough clout where they went into court with him, And the first thing that Della had to tell him was to take his hat off. He wouldn't take his hat off. And then he gets in front of the judge, and the judge starts to give him a sermon about prohibition and so forth. And he turns to Della, he says, "What's he saying?" And she says, "Well, you know, you can't make whiskey, and you can't make wine unless for sale." He says, "He telling me I can't make a whiskey. I make a whiskey. I want to make a whiskey. I make a whiskey." They had a hell of a time with him.
So what did he get? Did he go to jail?
No, they got him off. They got him off.
He swore to be good from then on.
What happened to the farm? I mean, did he go back?
No, the farm he went to live with somebody after that. I think
This is
he-
He
not
sold the farm?
Mm-hmm.
And Joe used to say, if you don't want to been able to keep the farm, you know,
Around.
well, it's
Your-
an old story.
Their father's
Yeah,
father.
it's always good.
Like,
I think he went to
Their
live with
grandfather.
Lena.
The other grandfather.
In
Grandma's.
Patterson.
Lena?
Well, they also sold the
Because
farm.
I saw him about a month before I enlisted. Dad took me down, and he was on his last legs, and he was about 80, in his mid-80s. He was in bed.
So that was in Patterson.
Yeah, I guess it was. And Dad said, "Well,
Well, they
no,
lived in Haledon.
huh?
They lived in Haledon,
Well,
right next to
yeah." And Dad said, "You know, John is going in the Army." And he looks up at me and he says, "Un conseño, debe ser de furbo,
Say it again, I want to understand.
debe ser de furbo, you have to be bold,
Stai furbo.
you know." And big smile on his face. He had a blanket over him. And I think he passed away the next month. Like Christmas or Easter, he would dress up with his black suit and shoestring tie and his white Panama, and he'd do the shopping. And we'd go down to Weinstein's butcher shop on First Avenue between 14th and 13th Street. And there was a big wholesale retail outfit. They had a railway coming out overhead where the carcasses of beef would be slid into his freezer, you know. And Weinstein, the old man, had a cage in the back of the store on one side where the butcher stalls ended. And he would be holding court there in his shop. The head butcher had his own butcher block right behind Weinstein's. His name was Joe. Grandpa and I would go down a couple of days before, and he would start doing the shop, whatever he was going to make for Easter and stuff like that for the family. We'd walk into the store. Weinstein would see him come in. He'd come out of his cage, because Grandpa used to use him when he had the restaurant on Elizabeth Street. And he'd come over, big, profuse gestures and hello and how are you, Don Pepino and so forth. And the next thing you know, he's breaking out a bottle of wine. And everybody's having a drink.
Little Manischewitz.
And he said, "What can I do for you?" So Grandpa would say, "Well, I'll need some chickens. I'll need some steaks. I'll need a few.
Easter, he needed a cat.
I'll need a few roasts." And he says, "Okay." He says, "Well, what do you want?" He said, "Well, give me about a dozen steaks." And he says, give me a dozen chickens. Give me about half a dozen steaks. And I'll take some lamb and I'll take some pork. Well, we couldn't carry all this stuff home. And then the kid would come up to the house with this load of meat, and Grandma would say, "What are you going to do with all this stuff? You're not down the restaurant anymore."
But where did they keep it? They didn't have a
They gave it
refrigerator.
away.
He says, they'll take it with them when they go. Everybody took everything home.
They gave it away.
But
So-
he would start from scratch.
So 3 siblings here. You guys ate well as you were growing
Oh,
up.
we did
Like
indeed.
kings.
What would be like a typical? What was on your table, like for of an evening? If you can remember Pepino, if not, like what
Yeah.
would I mean, I
On
ate at
Sunday,
Grandma's.
he
I
would
miss
cook,
it.
I said, you know,
Right.
he would have a soup on the back of the stove all week long. My grandmother would have a stock on the back of the stove all week long. And from that, we'd have a cup of soup, we'd have a little, a pasta dish. And we had hors d'oeuvres, we had salad and so forth. The meal would take about 3 hours.
Yeah.
And then the main dish would.
And then the main dish would be a meat.
Was there always pasta or was?
Yes.
Yeah, there was pasta most of the time.
And tomato sauce.
And, or else there was brodo with some fidolini in it, as well.
What's fidolini?
Little thin spaghetti.
Like angel hair.
Yeah, like angel hair.
I can
Angel hair
remember
pasta.
Grandma taking it in her hand and
Yeah,
scrunching
yeah,
it.
Dad will
Or
put
putting it
salt.
into a napkin and crushing it. Yeah, and then we'd have a roast. And sometimes, as an appetizer, he would make a fish. He would get a sea bass, and about that big, and he would put it into a poacher and poach it, and then take it out, take the skin off,
Mm.
leave the head on and tail, and then he would reconstruct with his own mayonnaise and some very thin slices of a vegetable like radish or something, like to make gills again, and he'd reconstruct that fish.
Now, May went on and on for years about the salmon, that he did that too,
Yeah,
from
yeah.
my christening. And I was christened at about the age of 3 or
Yeah.
4. And
And-
she never forgot
And
that
then all you had to
dish.
do was, he would cut off the fin, rather the scales, the bones, the fish bones.
But he would fillet it.
He would, no, it was put together, again.
Yeah.
We cut off the fish bones where they started out from the bottom of the fish. So all he had to do was just cut portions as he served it. Delicious.
And so
Capers,
what was like your
mayonnaise,
favorite?
and
What was your favorite thing?
What was that?
Like what's a favorite food from your childhood?
Everything.
You bet. There were none. But something I remember was ishirashi. Do you remember that?
Ishirashi?
The cherries that he used to
Oh, yeah,
do
chirashi.
in a very
Chirashi.
sweet liqueur sauce. And you just ate them like that. There wasn't on ice cream or anything.
And then
that
Grandma
was
would,
only once or twice a year when
She
he
would give
make
sour
that.
cherries,
Mm-hmm.
and she would boil them up. And then she would make a cherry, she would make a cherry drink
Oh, there they
that she
are.
would stock.
Mm.
And in the summertime, she would pour this out
Well,
into glasses.
well, we're talking and talking.
Time that she met my father, because of being introduced through this connection, she looked up and he was looking down her dress.
See how you remember certain
What about the story of the
I
first
thought they were
kiss?
chaperones.
Well, we heard some story about they went out on a date
Dad
and
brought his mother over to see Grandpa. Okay?
Okay.
And when he came over to 14th Street, he met my mother.
And Margaret came with him.
Margaret came with him.
Yeah.
You sure? Okay, well then that's how they could have met.
Okay,
You
so.
know,